Skills Day, organized by CIVOM on this beautiful day. I am Akshay Bajaj and I serve as the co-founder of Global Learning Space Network. We extend our applause for everyone joining us live from various nations of the world. The theme for this LinkedIn Live is Empowering India's Youth through Innovative Learning and Industry Linkages. So, ladies and gentlemen, finally comes the moment I have been waiting for. YouTube हो या LinkedIn, the vibes are set. आज का सेशन है यूथ के लिए द बेस्ट बेट. तीन स्टार्स, तीन माइंड्स, जिनके काम में है क्लास, जो बदल रहे हैं स्कूल्स एकदम फर्स्ट क्लास. डिजाइन, एम्पैथी और विजन का फ्यूजन, ये है यूथ स्किल्स का लाइव रेवोल्यूशन. Get ready for an exciting introduction never before tried on LinkedIn Live. So let's do the Shivaram. बिल्डिंग्स हो या विजन, शी लीड्स विद ग्रेस. आर्किटेक्ट सारिका के काम में है कल्चर का सॉलिड बेस. 2 decades का एक्सपीरियंस, रूटेड एंड वाइज, वो बनाती हैं लर्निंग स्पेसेस दैट हेल्प स्टूडेंट्स राइज. विद विजडम सो ट्रू, उनके डिजाइन लर्निंग स्पेसेस हैं फ्रेश, रूटेड और न्यू. SJK आर्किटेक्ट्स की पार्टनर, अ ट्रू गाइडिंग लाइट, सारिका मैम, आपका स्वागत है विद ऑल आवर डिलाइट.
Thank you so much, Akshay. This was so poetic and so beautiful. आपने बहुत ही अच्छी कविता के साथ इसे शुरू किया है.
There's one more coming up next. So, डिजाइन से करें लर्निंग को फील. Just a second. Just a second. डिजाइन से करें लर्निंग को फील. फैजा का स्टाइल इज द रियल डील. 1997 से एडुकेटर एंड फेस द फ्यूचर की शुरुआत. गेम्स और सिमुलेशन से वो सिखाती है रियल लाइफ की हर एक बात. बोर्ड गेम्स हो या लाइव एक्शन प्ले, ह्यूमन स्किल्स ग्रो इन हर प्लेफुल वे. Faeza ma'am, welcome to this special day. We are so thrilled to hear what you have to say.
Thank you so much. You will have to do a lot to live up to your introductions.
Oh. And last, but the most interesting one, from layout to legacy, he plans it all. Yogi के spaces let young minds stand tall. Director of CIVOM, future ready है इनका काम. ऑस्ट्रेलिया के रेको के साथ बनाए लर्निंग की नई दास्तान. Business World 40 under 40 and EDII के alumni star, seating, signage, flooring, all raised to par. Yogi sir, your work makes learning spaces thrive. Thank you for joining us on this LinkedIn Live.
Thank you, Akshay.
And now we'll have it from our guest speakers. This session has 3 wonderful phases of discussion where we'll ask some interesting questions to our speakers. Every phase is of 15 minutes each, and within this phase, our speakers will get 5 minutes each. So the first theme is the future skill imperative. And the first question comes to Ms. Faeza. What are the must-have human skills like creativity or adaptability that AI can't touch? And how do we design learning to build them? All yours.
Thank you. Let me answer the first half of that question first. What are the human skills that AI can't replace? And I will make an argument that AI cannot replace any of them. All it can do is imitate them. It's imitating them well. Let's not get them wrong. It's imitating it well, but it can't replace it. I mean, even if we go to base level human skills, right, like critical thinking, that seems base level, and that seems something that AI seems to have done well. It's doing it faster and easier than we do. But even if I use generative AI and I ask it to write something for me, whether it's a post I want to put on LinkedIn or an essay I want to submit, I can't use it. I can't use it wholesale. I've got to read it through. I've got to decide if I like what it says or not, if it matches my point of view. I have to evaluate some of the opinions that it puts in and decide if, this does correlate to the example that I want to give. There's a lot of critical thinking, even with whatever AI produces. And that's really just base level, right? AI might be able to help us with the human skills that are more theoretical. But after theory, whether it's creativity, whether it's critical thinking, whether it's adaptability, AI cannot act. We are the only ones that can act. Whatever AI suggests, whatever technology suggests, if it is going to be implemented in the real world, then it's us human beings who do it. And that comes from skills like persistence. That comes from skills like adaptability. That comes from skills like taking initiative. That comes from our ability to have an awareness of the people around us and to show them empathy and to take in their point of view. And fundamentally, also leadership, right? Our ability to inspire and empower people around us, and our ability to have vision and see the big picture. Those actionable skills, none of that is something that we can get AI to replace for us. So there'll always be a need for human skills. AI remains a replicator. AI remains a tool, at least in the iteration it is now. Um, Now, the second half of your question is perhaps a little bit more interesting, right? Which is how do we develop learning to build them? Now, that is, it's an easy question to answer. It's a difficult question to execute. Because what it's asking from our teachers, and I've been a teacher myself for 25 years, is a complete reimagining of what their job description is. And it's asking schools and policy leaders who create curriculum, it's asking for exam boards, anybody who's involved in education today, it's asking them to completely rethink the way they define education today. How do we define education today? Even the most progressive of us, even the ones of us who know how to speak about human skills, who understand the impact of AI, who recognize things like the importance of interaction and gamification, we're still fundamentally driven by that need for, especially in the Asian societies that we're familiar with, in India and Southeast Asia, we're still driven by exam results. At the end of the day, it's how you score in math, it's how you score in history, it's how you score in your languages that matter. And as long as that's the educator's primary goal, if that is the teachers and the school's primary measurement of how not only the student function but the school functions, then bringing these learning journeys for the kids will always be secondary. We can all help each other create interactive lesson plans where kids activate human skills. We can add gamification elements to our lesson plans that allow kids to practice leadership, to practice communication, to practice curiosity. But that takes time. It takes lesson time, it takes planning time. And if all of that time is primarily prioritized for, hey, here not only is the content you need to pass your maths exam, but here are the tricks, the tips, the cheats that help you understand the questions in the exams, whether it's the IG or the CBSE or the IB, whichever the exam board, look out for this keyword, that keyword, here's how you manipulate your answer to make sure the examiner likes it. That's what teachers are spending their class time on. Where is the time, Akshay? There is no time for teachers to explore creativity, to explore adaptability, to let their kids fail. So it's bringing it into the classroom is not hard, but we have to retrain our teachers, and we have to be willing to say, let's take some things out. Let's throw away some content that kids can learn from Wikipedia. Why do we have to bring it to? Why do we have to bring it into the classroom? Let's throw away things that Google Translate can do for us, right? This is where we work with with technology rather than compete with it. And right now, I think we are at that conflation where it's a competition with technology rather than we're working together and enhancing what technology can do for us.
That was a very wonderful take. And moving on to the second question we have for architect Sarika Shetty. Ma'am, how does the physical design of learning spaces, from learning spaces to campuses, naturally encourage critical thinking and collaboration?
I think I'd first like to thank Faeza for such a beautifully articulate description of, she's on the other side. She's kind of putting these kids and enabling them and their journey through all the years of education that you kind of see through. And we are on the other side. And I feel this whole talking between the two is such an important one that needs to eventually happen, that the bridging of the gap is something so important. We kind of start just to not even be able to directly answer your question, Akshay. The first thing is that when we get educators asking for a particular vision, I think it is imbibed in that particular management of an educator who's looking at a vision. Now that has to be trickled into so many different demographics of students that come into a institution, that you have to be able to give spatial emotion, which is at a level that has parity. Like the demographics, forget, boards. You know that every single board will have some definition of demographics by itself coming in. While where is the room for kids to be nurtured in an environment that critical thinking is the basework foundation on the whole, that gives them the life skills to go out and do whatever they want. I just so beautifully um, loved what Faeza said, that, cut the crap, remove things that kids can definitely do themselves, don't bring them to the classrooms, and allow for discussions. Make your kids your mediators for a future that you may not have seen, but enable that rather than becoming devil's advocate or an argumentator to their process. And I think that's the only way education can kind of allow for parity across different boards, whether it is a state board, whether it is a municipal school, whether it is an IB. Why can't the aspects of what an IB school uses be in any municipal school? Those kids will kind of flourish right from the start. So now, to answer what architecture can do, for us, what's really important is the empathy of the space, the emotion of the space, and what can that do to allow for empathy and compassion to become a part of your journey of who you are. And how do you do that? You do that with spaces that are naturally grounded, with spaces that allow for your sensorial stimulus to be ignited, for your imagination to be ignited, for curiosity to be kind of really felt. And how do you learn that? You can learn that from your peers, you can learn that from your guides and teachers. How do you do that in spaces where you're allowing, which means that, okay, make your classroom be suffused with beautiful light. You want light to be able to come up. You don't want a space which is uncomfortable with 20-degree air conditioning, which most of the IB schools today demand, where even if I'm freezing, I'm supposed to kind of bring in a jacket and sit inside it. Yeah, that's the it comes in as a language for the uniform. Why do I need that when I can be in a space that is passively cooled, and I'm in an environment that I can add to the microclimate of the space, design it in a manner that my microclimate allows for biodiversity to flourish in those areas? How do I naturally learn? For me, the most beautiful way of learning is actually seeing it. And I keep giving this example of, the life cycle of a butterfly. And what better way to learn the life cycle of a butterfly than seeing it spring up in your garden there, which is right outside your classroom? Why don't you bring your classroom out into the open spaces? So most of the designs that we end up doing is we actually allow for the classrooms to completely open out into the backyard. We end up taking our classrooms, face it to the north, while we have a single veranda which is to the south, and it cuts down the south heat from entering into the classroom, but it allows me to kind of open up and transit into the courtyards. Those courtyards become spaces for play, spaces for congregation, spaces for assemblies, spaces for anything that allows you to really nurture your bond with your peers, whether it is senior, whether it is a junior. Allow for those interconnections between primary sections to middle section, that people can kind of, look at how chance encounters can allow for the beauty of relationships. You look up to somebody. You look up to somebody. Why? Because you realize there is some chord that you're hitting, and spaces can do that. I uh, I have kind of given a mixed answer, but I think it answers the kind of question you were hinting at.
That was a mind-boggling answer. We started from how we can remove disparities when it comes to demographics that has meaning for different curriculums and different boards. Then you led on to how we can have climate responsive strategies incorporated in schools, and finally how courtyards enable interconnectedness, and also it reminded me of the angans that we used to have in our spaces.
Older schools. Actually, the Anganwadis were the best examples. Anganwadi was that is a wadi with the Angan in the middle. So the students have the opportunity to come back into the Angan, which is nothing but a courtyard. So actually, the name, even the anatomy of the name, if you actually break down, it has what it means. which is so true. And the language has the beauty then.
Hmm. Nice, nice. That was an amazing answer. So the final question of this theme is for Yogi sir. Sir, from CIVOM's lens, what are the top future skills our learning environments must cultivate, and how do we embed them in design?
Great. I think Fuzzy and Sarika both had put it very different perspectives to this. And to continue from there. First of all, we need to really understand how do we see future. When you talk about future skills, what is that bringing to us, as a thought process. So, if we look at future perspective, one thing is for sure that information is coming to the intelligence. Okay, now do we really need to take the path of the industrial age, which we are still into? Okay, do we think the shift to the role of teachers, vision of schools, need to get away from what they were into industrial ages? So all of that was been designed from an idea of education and training, never from an idea of learning. So if we look at this, future is giving us this enablement. We are coming to the again onto the earlier age of Gurukul, where the information was not so key in that idea. It is your human activities, your human development was the key idea. So because of this industrial age, everything has oriented toward occupation. You have been made and trained and scored and certified to be occupied somewhere. So if we get this clutter out, we really would see how me or anyone as a human has its own purpose. And if education can orient towards that, to that real human learning, then all that can be shaped up. So I believe this is what we should pick from the idea of future, what technology is bringing to us. I always say that if you look at from a Gurukul, all that jati system or caste system has been designed around the interest and passion to the skills. Okay, if I'm good at woodworking, okay, my guru would put me in the group of woodworkers. I would get this community there, and that eventually become the caste system. Okay, so think they had that idea of identifying the interest and passion inside an individual, and then shaping them into that community, and then giving them passionate livelihood. So if we look at that, you would never have this midlife crisis, identity crisis, because you do what you love. As a human, that's very important part, that you can only skill if there is a passion around it, if there is an higher level of elevation inside you. So I always believe that education's goal should not be occupation, it should be elevation. Okay, if we can elevate them, then everything would come around. So future is giving us this possibility of not being into the information or content. The other thing which I would like to put, it is from I think Abhilash, if you can play that. It's a beautifully put by Angela Mayers. Go to the second slide. It is in 2015 World Economic Forum. So she had dropped down a clutter out of it, like Faeza was mentioning. She got into foundational literacies. That is literacy, numeracy, scientific, financial, cultural, civic, just awareness. This is what is known as lifelong learning model, and beautifully put across something which we need to know from a literacy point of view. Individual competencies, like we were talking about, critical thinking, problem solving, curiosity, communication, collaboration, and those are so important, which is not happening into our classroom. So our schools are designed, or education is designed for competition, not for collaboration. Okay, we are, when we work in profession, we are expect to have collaboration. So you trained a brain for competition, you're expecting collaboration. That would not work. Okay, so a lot of time we struggle to get that idea of collaboration in this. Third is character quality, which is what we're talking about: leadership, social cultural awareness, persistence, grit, initiatives. All this makes us different. What AI never ever, what like Fuzzy mentioned, can get into. This is where you build the future through envisioning things. Ablash, just go on. I combine all those through a knowledge of learning, the human side of it, how human really, really thinks and learns. Okay, so when we look at the science of learning over years and the researches around it, how do you connect this skill sets to human connection and human's brain connection? There comes out a beautiful way to look at it. So let's say I talk about amygdala, I talk about neuron maps through associations. Okay, so if you know something in past, your connection to that would be very different. Okay, so when we look at the formative assessment to build around it. So when we have these skills and human connection, how do we really create, or how do CIVOM takes a way to move forward onto this spaces? Ablash, quickly, so I put it this way, that's where the magic is. Okay, the process or the program or the practice or the vision of an education institute has to connect to the people and to the place. If all three comes together, that's where the beauty of learning comes out. This is where the magic is. Okay, and if any of this is not aligned, it would fail. Now it can be not based on what IB or CBSE or any curriculum is. It is about how do you really, really envision your kids and their becoming. So we take it from there and we make it to the next level, which is Abhilash, next go. So I shifted to these four key questions. What do we want our learners to become? What experience can make that becoming happen? What space enables those experiences, and how do we know? Okay, and how do we know is that conviction which we have. So it is how this whole shift can taken up. Okay, so we really need to go to the humans orientation, the skill we want to develop, the experience we want to create, and space that can enable this. Okay, and over a period we come with a lot of modalities. If I'll just go quickly there, and this is continuous evolution, and the beauty, if you look at it, from instructor roles, which is transmission to coordination, and learner's role from reception to co-creation. Okay, so when we look at the end of it in the learning community, the whole clutter is out. The teacher is also a learner. A learner is also a learner. The space is also catalyst to learning. So when you look at this, how it is the most human way of looking at it. Okay, and this is how at CIVOM we are trying to think, enable those perspectives. So yeah, this is from my side. So there's a few models which can go into depth, but yeah. Thanks, Abhilash.
If we have to just take it as a reference and what is going around the trend and going viral right now on the news, then Sarika ma'am, Yogi sir, and Faeza ma'am, you must have seen that movie, Malayalam movie that is now famous for that U-shaped layout. But again, it is more on the instructor-centric model and not these models that we are exploring. So it has the pros and cons, but it has at least ignited a spark.
Yeah, that's where I was mentioning yesterday to someone. We still thinking it from a that old school teacher centric mindset. Till the point we do not shift there, if you are having teacher at the center stage, okay, this would not work. The idea of a U shape is based on idea of Socratic circle, okay, where everyone become a questioner. He proposed his philosophy. He inquired towards that. So that's what it is designed to. Okay, so we have to get as an adult the resistance that the way we have seen things has to go away. So till the point we don't allow our brain to receive that in that fullest of it. It is not been seen. A lot of time we propose designs to schools and they say how teachers would talk there. They would have the sound issues there. But I feel because we're still seeing it from a teacher-directed model, we're not seeing it from a student-centric model. The moment you shift it that way, you are also facilitator, you are a coordinator, you are a mentor, you are a guide. The moment you shift your roles to that, and it would look differently. So that's the resistance we as an adult has to get away.
That's where the retraining of the teacher has to begin, right? It's very unfair to ask teachers today to do that because nobody's prepared them for that. So we have to get our eggs in a row.
Yes.
I'd just like to add two things over there, which is, this whole Socratic method, which one talks about, where literally students, they're not passive recipients of knowledge. And that's what, today's day and age says, that the teacher is maybe the igniter, but not really is there to ignite the thought and to provoke that thought. But students are not there just to kind of take that knowledge in a passive mode. And the other thing that I felt, Yogi, that you kind of put together, which I think is very close to where you all are, is, in Ujjain, the Sandipani Gurukul, which was from Krishna's time, that has 64 skills. Now, I go to a school where I can choose to learn 64 skills or maybe two of them and master it in my whatever 6, 8 years of what that Gurukul system must have had. And then you kind of get abducted into your skill. And really, where did the
Yes.
life and the civilization come from? It was first, it was the art, then came civilization. So it's so
Agree.
important to actually see that skill development today, and artisanal learning and kind of making vocational training equally a part of the education system. If somebody doesn't want to learn STEM, doesn't want to know math, but wants to be able to do basic finances, but has the best skills to do embroidery, as in what do I do to make them kind of get to a skill development center, which is not just the schooling. I need to have my basic skills. Not everybody is cut off for learning the math and the science of the world, but if it's taught in a way that it engages, anybody can learn. So there is no disparity even there. It is, I think, the way it's kind of conveyed. So yeah, I feel somewhere that whole Gurukul system, and I don't know whether Indian knowledge system as IKS is trying to adopt that and is doing deeply into it. I have no clue to how much of a depth it is adopting, but yeah, these are important conversations to have, because I think we're all coming up full circle now.
And it is important. Think of it, the kind of democracy the whole technology is allowing us. Okay, that if you have, like you mentioned, the skill of embroidery, and if I can, market that to anywhere in the world. Okay, I can have that skill, and this skill can be specialized to me, and I have my livelihood coming from that, and I don't feel that it is
Of
inferior
course.
work. That's kind of democracy is coming through technology. So I also feel, when you look at the future, because earlier, if you're artisan to, let's say, stone carving or sculpture, people would travel countries to
Yeah.
come down to you. Okay, we are in the same world today. So if that's the way it can be looked at, we can have a lot of redoing now, and going back to the same philosophies where we started around.
Yeah, in today's day and age where social media is so important, marketability becomes important. So it's not just having the skill, but being able to market for your skill.
I
Yes.
think, if I might, I think it's taking that Gurukul system, right? The idea of doing what you're passionate about and what you're good at. But because of the globalization that we experience in today's world and technology allowing us to have that space, is that idea of that special skill that you have doesn't put you in a silo. You're not no
Yes.
longer working with just people or within an environment of people who share that particular pattern. Those echo chambers don't have to be developed. Now, the whole beauty of it is, if I take my skill set, but I'm surrounded by people with a completely different set of skills, but we work together to make something that's much more than a stone sculpture, or much more than my embroidery to make a handkerchief or a pillowcase. What can I do if I put somebody who's greatly skilled at stone sculpting, and somebody who's greatly skilled in embroidery, and tell them, now you come up with a project together that uses both of that, and that is what today's world allows us to do. That maybe, and I'm a big fan of the Gurukul system, but that's how we can add to it, right? It's not a circle. We're not returning to the start. It's a spiral, right? We're going further
Yes.
along.
Yes.
And those are still technical skills. What about if we added human skills to that? Somebody who's got great initiative, okay, but doesn't really fundamentally have any product to sell because they're not maybe creative. But you take somebody with great creativity, but then doesn't know how to market themselves. You take all of these people with different skill sets, and you say, instead of pigeonholing you, Instead of putting in a silo, let's work together in this group and see how we leverage off each other's strengths. Again, right, that is where my companion is not AI. AI is my tool, not my companion, right? My companion is that human
Yes.
being who isn't competing with me, to go back to your point, Yogi, where it shouldn't be about competing. I shouldn't be seeing that I'm the best at this against ABC. But how my best skill versus your best skill together can create a product that neither of us could have created alone. And Yogi, that's how me and you met. When we came, I will never
Yes.
forget
Yes.
that first conversation we had where you said, "You are software, I am hardware." Till today, I will remember that conversation, and it is a merging together of abilities and skills.
And there is no possibility that you can put competition in today's world, because the whole idea is so big, in the whole sense that the change is so deep. Then you keep doing it, you will still not able to finish it.
Correct. There is no end goal. There is no
So
apex.
there is no
Yeah.
end goal to that. There's so much to be contribute to. So if you see it from that perspective, life would be very, very different.
So all these answers combined remind me of this word construction. Ma'am, you come across this daily, Sarika ma'am. So the word construction is again made up of three words in English that we call it as morphemes. Okay, so there are three parts of it: construct and shun. So the meaning of it is the act of building together. So that is how all these answers built together. And Sarika ma'am, your reference of that embroidery reminded me that like just yesterday this IHL, Indian Hotels Company, has joined hands with Indian Army to open this skill development centers in Uri in JNK to train these youths in fashion design as well as embroidery and different crafts. So that's how they are now coming together.
Interesting. That goes to the analogy of a stone sculptor and an embroider coming together to create a wonderful art which nobody has seen in the past. Yeah.
Nice. So that calls for a closure of the first theme. So the second phase of our discussion is designing engaging learning ecosystems. And the first question comes to architect Sarga. When SJK Architects approaches a learning environment project, what core design principles and processes do you employ?
So the first thing is, where is the site? I think for us, the context really matters, whether it's the regional context, the cultural context, social context, to really derive from there. Then it is the climatic context, which tells you how am I kind of making it much more comfortable. At the end of all of this is an institution that will allow for free thinking and an experiential learning. So whatever is done, wherever it is contextualized, however you are kind of attending to the brief of the client, the final goal is, will this institution allow for free thinking and experiential learning, which is going to be at the top of everything, and in a way allow for pedagogy to kind of restream when the spaces are so lively. Uh, we have an example from one of the schools we've done in this very hot and dry climate in Warangal, where we have conserved all the rainwater that comes down. It receives littler rain than the rest of the country or rest of South India. And all the water is conserved into the stepped pools that we have in between classrooms. So during the rain, it is kind of collecting all the water, and all the water is channelized into a collection pond, and that collection pond becomes like a biodiverse haven. While when it and you don't replenish it. There is no idea of water that needs to be permanent over there. Now, when it is hot and you start having evaporation losses, the same pund or step well actually brings the music room out into the space, and it becomes the band is actually performing in that step well. So what you're doing with it is that in the rains, there are primary kids actually learning buoyancy by putting paper boats along all those water streams and seeing how the whole thing works. There's wind and there's water and there's the current which is allowing for movement. And then at other times, you're bringing in the music room out into the open. There's a beautiful bahunia tree right there where you see all the sunbirds kind of chirping out, and you're making or creating that environment for a performance to happen. Now that's really what we aim to do in our institutions so that experiential learning becomes something that remains with you. And that is itself a sort of a learning that you can kind of develop curiosity from. And then, of course, empathy in a space is also looked at from the perspective that, in our schools, what we end up doing is we start descaling the scales so that the primary kids are or on the upper level, let's say it's a G+1 structure, the whole roof kind of droops down so that they feel within a scale that is comfortable for them and not a scale which is much taller. So that's where scale also starts playing a very important role, that you're not entering anywhere that is intimidating for you. You need to feel comfortable, you need to feel in your skin, and that's what spaces can do. So it's about then kind of very empathetically strategizing where you would put different age groups of kids in a school which may be vertical or maybe ground spread, depending on the context and the amount of land that's available.
That indeed made us look like how you dive deep into and bring some thoughtful research while designing these learning environments. And that brings me to the second question for Ms. Faiza. How do we design learning experiences, curriculum, digital tools to be truly engaging, personalized, and accessible for India's diverse youth?
Okay, let's start with the idea of diversity, right? In education, at least the way education functions today, diversity is problematic because diversity means that you learn in different ways, and if the teacher's goal or the school's goal is to get you to a particular end, and that end is fixed for everybody, then I have to make sure that everybody who is different is separated so I can target each of them individually. In Singapore today, in India today, in all the schools that I've worked with and all the schools I've talked to, this is leading to this call for, hey, we need smaller classrooms. And the idea of the teacher has a fewer number of kids so that there's more concentration. But to go back to Yogi's point, that is still very much catered around the concept of a teacher-centered learning. If we let kids learn from each other, then diversity is only a strength. Then the fact that there are 200 kids, never mind 40, but 200 kids in a municipal school together without walls, right? To go back to Sarika ma'am's beautiful utopian school. And you put them together and now you say you learn and feed off each other. You are each other's learning companions, right? I'm giving you a project. The project has multiple, and the project could have multiple solutions. Surprise me with your solution. The project can use physics, the project can use history, the project can use geography, the project can use language and creativity. How you approach the project is up to you. You need to solve the water crisis in a village. That is your project. You decide how to deal with it. One group can say, hey, we're going to build some form of a mechanical system, right, that helps get water from the river to the village. Somebody else will say, no, we need to create a campaign. We need a campaign. We need it to take it to the big city so that people in the big city and the state governments understand what the problem is. How you deal with the problem is entirely up to you. You learn from each other. You learn that there has to be collaboration. There has to be the idea of, hey, to do this, I need this understanding of physics that I never knew before. How can I find out that information? How do I use technology or the technology that's available to me to create this mechanics that I've never learned before? Or I want this campaign, but I need to create a different flyer for, say, a political leader, but a different flyer or a different communication or email to maybe somebody who's working in a corporation. That's when I use AI. Here's the content, same project, same content. Can you reword it for me where number one, the email is sent to a political leader, number two, the email is sent to a corporate leader with their different needs and inclinations and agendas in mind, right? So I think diversity becomes this brilliant tool that we're completely forsaking today because we see it as a negative. We see it as we have to keep kids apart because, oh, there's bullying, or oh, there's the idea that they're learning at different speeds, whether it's socioeconomic diversity, whether it's gender diversity, whether it's racial or religious diversity, or whether it's learning ability diversity. Why not gain from each other? Now, what I've done, but what we've explored today in schools is literally we put them in a dystopian environment. We have like 1,000 kids from different countries, different language abilities, different academic interests, in a room, different socioeconomic background, in a room together, 1,000, and this is a dystopia. And their missive, their mission is very simple: find a way to make your tribe first survive in this dystopia, and then secondly thrive in that dystopia. And it's up to you to use the resources available to you, whether they're physical or digital, or the people in your team, to make that happen. And their solutions, actually, their solutions are mind blowing. It's something no teacher could have taught. It's something no teacher could have predicted. I couldn't predict it. And I spent months trying to think of the different solutions they would come up with. We had teams who completely changed their mind and decided, but I have to be in this situation as an interpreter, because I'm the only one who can speak both Hindi and English. Here I have a group of kids who can only speak Hindi. Here I have a group of kids that can only speak English. My value is my ability to bridge these two groups of people together. I don't need to do anything technical. My job is purely to act as the communicator or the bridge. Somebody else decides that I'm really introverted, I'm very shy, but I have an ability to manipulate numbers and information in a way that the others don't. This is where I will leverage my strength. This is where I will make myself useful to the team. Everybody finds a way that they can add substance, right? When you leverage diversity, we don't need smaller classrooms. We don't need U-shaped classrooms with the teacher in the center of it. The teacher is just there to say, okay, you need this information, you need this particular bit of knowledge. I can give you some of it, or I can direct you to a digital tool or a physical book or an expert who will be able to help you understand more than I can, but I can help you frame that. I can make sure that you don't get overwhelmed. I can tell you what's possible and what's not possible, but it's up to you to design the learning that you want to create. And the other thing we got from that is we put them all together, right? And we had underprivileged kids. I mean, kids who had never left their little, small little societies before. And here they were with kids from some of the most expensive IB schools in India in the same room. And they started off feeling so intimidated. I have no value to this room, they're thinking, right? What can I provide when there's somebody here who's going to the best school in India and who's got this level of education? And they realize that they are so much more resilient than some of the kids who are there. They are the ones who get them who have their adaptable mindset, and when a certain course of action leads to failure, to say, hey, it's not over. We still have time. Let's try option B, option C. That skill set. I mean, I'm generalizing. Every kid comes in with a different skill set, but that idea that everybody has value, and some values are so underappreciated in schools today by educators, by employers, by everybody, is really found in the people you least expect to see it in. And when we embrace the diversity, when we put them together, we let them feed off each other, we let them learn what they want to learn. Diversity becomes a beautiful thing, and we truly have democracy through technology, because it's no longer about what you can afford. It's how you find your team, where everybody offers something different, and how we work together to build that world that we want to see.
Short of words to what should I applaud you or should I appreciate you? But that takes me to two examples. Yogi sir, you used to share that you made a D-Ottoman for the learners, and you told them just one way to use it, and they found two more ways to use it.
Exactly.
And then you also told one thing, that why make them wait to go to the lab or the library session? Bring the lab and library inside the class, learning spaces. So I have a question related to that for you. That is coming up next. How is CIVOM designing flexible, inclusive physical spaces like vocational labs to support hands-on skill development for future demands?
Like I started last time also, why do we think this labs has to separate out? Why school should not be lab for future? Why should we not practice what we're going to do in the world? Okay, so my classroom should be a lab rather than having a vocational lab separately. So the whole idea of classroom must shift, from a classroom to a studio probably, or to a lab, where I can get all the resources, which I'm looking for to learn. If I want to shift or switch to something, who's stopping me? Okay, if I need to refer a resource, what is the hurdle? So if you create these labs or studios where you allow people from outside like Fuzzy was mentioning, someone from municipal corporation, someone from a political side, someone from a corporate side, someone who's gonna be there, who's giving you. So why should not be our softboard should be painted with the real heroes rather than book heroes in our books. So if we can get those real life heroes in the classroom, instead of having a library, if we'll have a human library, the world would be a very different place. Because then the conviction which we get inside us, as a humans, you can have a lot of content from outside, but conviction is what makes us whatever we are going to be. This conviction only comes when you have this inbuilt confidence that I can change that. So to bring this conviction, you need all those people where I always say, a lot of the skills of humans actually come from seeing others. Like cycling, swimming. You could never imagine as a kid that you can ride a cycle which doesn't have a balance. You can defy physics, or you can defy gravity by looking at that. You cannot do it. The moment you see someone riding a cycle, you believe, you have this conviction that I can do that. So a lot of times this conviction helps you outgrow yourself, from the circumstances you're coming. And that's where the world changes very differently, that people who's coming from a humble backgrounds can do great in life, because they get this conviction that we can change this. So all the crazy people, all the people who's making the difference are the ones who believe in this conviction to change it. So I believe when you look at the classrooms, it should be like a lab. We should not have a specialized vocational lab. From a commerce side of, I can beautifully put across that you can have a classroom where you have the wet and messy area, dry and messy areas. You can have sinks available in the classroom, a library, curriculums, books, all of that. But if you really look into the intent of it, the kind of problem you're trying to solve is this idea that how humans really or how the learners really look at that. So I would put something across. Abhilash, if you can just put up the slide from where we left, I just show you a couple of real life examples how that's happening into the classroom. And when you see this, where Fuzzy mentioned, if we can learn from peer to peer, just go to the where we left around. Yeah, go further. I'm just going to take you the real life examples. Just keep going. Go to the end of it. Go on. So like, if you look at this example, go back. So you have studio, you got breakout spaces, you got learning studios, media zones, learning commons, teachers collaboration. Now the idea was, when you go to a laboratory, do you let your kids think, ideate? Our system is designed that you have predefined experiment and predetermined results. That optical lens mein dekhna hai, and then you'll have the images, convex, concave, and I don't know where you're gonna use it. So we don't let them ignite that idea that why you are actually going for that. We have potassium permanganate to dilute at this much dilution time, all of this to record around. But how he's gonna, I'm gonna put it into real life context. So idea is, where is the space where we can think? If I'm not going to think, there is no fun of having a lab. You can have all big labs available, all modern labs, but it doesn't let me think through. And this is all redundant some way. Yeah, Abhilash, just go on. Go on. Then I'm also surprised a lot of time. When you look at computer labs, there is structured, organized, formal instructional labs. And I'm telling you, try it as hard as you can and give them instruction. Then you click by this, you click by this, and you go there. They would never learn the computer science. You had to apply into a project and use that technology in the project. Then the whole idea of using a technology would be different. So you cannot actually learn this. So whatever structure you formally wanted to have and press it to a different degree, this is not going to get through. So this is the product of which Akshay was mentioning. When we were designing, we didn't knew that how many uses it can, but this user has used it very differently, and we never thought of that. So when you give this to kids, they have a beautiful way to look at it. Like Faji was mentioning that we could never think as an adult, how do they going to utilize it? Yes, Abhilash. So this is where I was talking about. So now there is no teacher centricities. Okay, go Abhilash forward. So there's a lot of peer-to-peer, mentoring, guiding, all of that happening around. Okay, doing by hands. So this is the human way of learning can be get down to. Quickly, just run down to two more further there. So look at the posture of a teacher itself. Fuzzy can relate to that. It's very hard for a teacher to teach with other teachers. As an adult, the resistance between two adults together, with the kind of we call it ego, we call it whatever, it's very hard to get yourself naked down to a level of learning and teaching together. So when you have 3-4 teachers together, think about the mindsets you're into. And this is all when they are being given the real life problems, you bring it from and that's why I believe the role of education is we look at the problem in the society, bring it down to a classroom lab, solve it with the knowledge and support of the guidance and the content which we receive, and actually implement. I often give an example of a kid who created a early detection and advanced detection of pancreatic cancer in a lab in US at the age of 17, which other research lab couldn't do it. Now think about empathy he received from a cancer of his relative, and then whatever he's learning the lipids and proteins and taking it from to that connection and solving it. So it is 90% accurate and 90% advanced than what it was earlier. So that's the kind of magic can happen in this labs. So my take would be always that why do we create classrooms? Let the whole school be a lab. That should be our playground to learn what we want to really learn.
Okay. So I have something from Yogi sir's answer, and I would like to address it to Sarika ma'am. So ma'am, since you deal a lot into architecture, so it's only now that I understand what is angle of incidence and angle of reflection while I was studying the shading devices. Okay, the shelves, lighting shelves. Okay, that makes more sense to me and makes me understand now. And even why northern hemisphere, southern hemispheres exist, and what is the wind movement, and what is the orientation of space. So only now I understand. If this would have been taught to me during those days, then my understanding of geography would have been better. So that should have been like
Just to give
mentioned.
an example, when people come with this whole science of Vastu, now science of Vastu is nothing but the sun and the wind. Now I can't use a blanket rule saying that I'm in India and I should not sleep with the head on the north. Why? Because my blood is being pulled to the brain while I'm in the northern hemisphere and magnetism is working on it. But in Australia, I have to sleep in the north and not in the south because the reverse is going to work. So I think it's just as basic as the science on the human body that works. And it's not Vastu. The Vastu here differs to the Vastu elsewhere because the climatic conditions differ, the energy of the earth on which you're sitting differs, and largely the magnetism of the earth changes.
So I think it's a lovely analogy, but it's the idea of what education has become, right? We're learning from the collective wisdom of the past. That's what it is. Today, education is from a textbook. We're looking at what other people have discovered in the past, and some of that doesn't apply anymore in today's world. But the education of that content that has been derived has become sacred, which is, to go back to your point. But if we start with experiential learning, what makes sense today, and remember the fundamentals, is to use the world around us to learn about things through that. And the world around us doesn't have to be nature, it could include technology. Then to go back to your point, to understand that then the same rules won't apply. We're in different parts of the world. I'm in Singapore, you guys are in India, although I work with a lot of Indian schools, will be the same. I know what applies in Singapore will not apply in India. Therefore, what I've done with the Singapore kids will not work with what I do with the India kids, and I have to change that. So, to go back to that analogy, we must remember that content isn't sacred. Content only applies in the context in which we use it.
Perfect. So,
And this is where I think the whole idea of real life application or applied dynamics is not been taught to us. It's always reverse. It looks complicated, but it's always reverse. The way I give an example of figuring out a volume of an egg. Okay. If you think it literally in sense of the context of your education, you'll figure out a formula for that. Okay, you never try to look at critically.
Right.
Okay, a lot of this is how we have been designed, and it can be done through putting volume of in a glass, and subtracting the volume of a cylinder, and you can get this out. Okay, so this is where how you have this anchor from your brain to get the data. So I had a beautiful class in my master's by a professor called DDT, Dindayal Trivedi, and he has made me think creatively from a practical model point of view. When you have a problem, shift your mind to 10 degrees to that problem. So it's like whenever we look at business ideas in textile, the first idea was the daily wear garments or fashion garments and all of that. But he made us ask to do a 10-degree rotation to the context of different domains. Instead, think about safety textile, tech techs, med techs, medical textiles, performance textiles. Now when you look at this and when you go deeper there, you might not find any competition. So he was talking about performance textile, which is used in filters. Okay, now there will be one or two companies in the world who's just doing that.
That I think, Yogi, boils down to what we were talking about initially, which is human skills, right? The content can come from anywhere, but that ability to
context
think
is-
creatively, to adapt to the information that you've been given, to take initiative and find a market that didn't exist before, that's what we're neglecting today. That's what, even with the onset of AI, AI will only give me the answers based on the prompt I feed into it. Because I take initiative, then my AI feed might be full of how can I take this idea and do something different with it. But somebody else who doesn't think like that, somebody else who has no initiative, no passion, no drive, no curiosity, their AI feed is going to look completely different from mine. They'll have one-line prompts and be very happy with the answers that they get. So AI is not going to solve the problems if we don't make ourselves people who take initiative, the curiosity, to ask those questions that your professor asked you, right? Don't give me what's out there. Help me generate or ideate something that isn't. And this is what I'm thinking. And with each response, oh, that's great. Can we shift it a little bit this way? That's great. Can we shift it a little bit that way, right? So, yeah.
And then that kicks you inside. I feel that whole idea of dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin starts kicking you differently. And that's where the happiness question also start increasing. That you as a person get yourself valued more.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's where your passion ignites.
So beautifully answered by everyone. So that leads us to the final phase of this discussion, that is bridging for tomorrow, collaboration and lifelong growth. So the first question comes to Yogi sir. How can designed spaces, both physical and digital, effectively bridge the gap between academia and industry for youth mentorship and practical exposure?
Okay. Can you repeat the question again?
How can designed spaces, both physical and digital, effectively bridge the gap between academia and industry for youth mentorship and practical exposure?
See, this is what we spoke in the last also. The classroom should not be a worksheet factory. It should be the industry in itself. It should be the grounds to practice things. If I was mentioning in the last conversation that if you look at models like Sweden and other countries, they do not have NIT. They do not have IIT preparations. They do not have architectural competitions. They do not have NID competitions. Nothing is in a competitive way. The idea is in their early grades they were asked to look at what they want to really do, look at that, and practice in a real world, have your on job trainings on that. Think about in 2 years of IIT coaching, you get to learn about physics, chemistry, maths, which you studied in your 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. And then if you pass and you get into IIT, you are supposed to be an electrical engineer. Okay. Now look at the context here. You 2 years you read those subjects, you mastered that, but you are not allowed to practice that. The practice would be very different because industries run very differently than what you get into this context. So if I use this 2 years of coaching and actually working in a factory and then look at that, I really wanted to be electrical engineer or not at the end of it. If I am an electrical engineer and I cannot figure out what is neutral ground phase, I cannot map the connections, what is the whole fun of doing it? Okay, so this is where we really need to shift the context that this whole classroom should get this industrial connection, the real life connection. Even in colleges and universities, today they are teaching C++, where world is moved to different, computational engineering.
Whiteboarding and all this.
Yeah, the world is at a different level altogether. So, and naturally, the guy who's drop out and who's practicing it differently would excel in the life than the guy who's in the college because he's not binded by those rules. So, that is the dynamics which we really need to put it across in the classrooms. With the technology shift, I think every 6 months your program should change. The pace the world is changing. We our industrial age sustained for 60 years, information age sustained for 30 years, intelligence age is going to sustain for 20 years, meta intelligence maybe for 10 years. So that the speed of the change is so high, and now if our programs are not in that pace, it will outpace us. So ideas, this all need to be brought down into a very strong industry connection in the classrooms that we can learn every day from that. And this is high pace evolutions. So I pity my nation's youth that we brain drain ourselves into these competitive exams. Think about 2 years of coachings for across most of the programs. On what level of the brain draining. So here I feel parenting needs a very strong context. Parent needs to get away with the idea of that he's going to be breadwinner just after his graduation, because that load and responsibility start focusing them that this is a full proven method. If you go to IIT, you get the job and you'll get something out of it, and you kill that kid. And 40 years, even I know a lot of people who had practiced this, who gone to this formula, been successful. At the age of 40, they got what have been which were targeted to them. But if you ask them internally, they are not happy. They got bank balances, they got cars, they got bungalows, they got feeded their families, but internally they are dry. So is that worthy to live? So the whole context of time is less, which we generally don't value, and we have been red raced or programmed by the environment we are in. And I think education has to give us that spark to outgrow that or challenge those notions which are there. So yeah, this is what I would see.
So that answer does connect to what Sarika ma'am started with, that not every learner is cut out for science or core engineering. They need more diverse approaches. And the question for Sarika ma'am is, how can architects actively drive industry academia partnerships? Can it be done through the very design of educational and vocational spaces?
I think in a way it answers everything that we spoke, where Yogi already mentioned that, why should the learner space not be a lab? And if the future of education tomorrow is to look at learning as a lab, then you don't need these separate maker spaces. We as professionals or designers are given a particular brief which suits the curriculum or the pedagogy. But at the same time, just to give you an example, from 20 years ago, when we were still working on that campus even today. It started as an engineering college campus where we did the drawing hall. Now, 23 years ago, engineering foundation course had technical drawing in the first year for every single stream. You went and you took your T square and you drew there. So we had a space called the drawing hall. We designed a beautiful space which was like fully north light, beautiful light coming in. On the south it's completely blocked out. A beautiful space where light is the sutradhar. And today, technical drawing is not there anywhere in any foundational first year engineering course. Now that space has become a collaborative learning space. Now that space has literally become a space where students come together, they pitch their ideas to each other before they get into the next space, which is right next door that we have designed, which is called it's basically the incubation center. So this becomes a collaborative thinking lab from what it used to be. So I think flexibility and adaptability is the most important thing when it comes to design as well, because I'm building something for the next 50 to 100 years. You can't be changing spaces or making more. That's not going to be sustainable at all. Curriculum is going to change, pedagogy is going to change. You have to outgrow the whole method that spaces have to be of a single discipline. It needs to be interdisciplinary, it needs to be transdisciplinary, it needs to be multidisciplinary, so that the sustainability of the space lives out even beyond the curriculums that change. And for that, only flexibility and adaptability works. And hence, designing the scale of spaces is very important for us. Like on the same campus, we just handed over a dining hall. Now, it was meant for 6,000 students, and we broke it down into 4 fingers so that every finger could, hold roughly about 450 students, up and down 900 students. And the kind of community you're forming is a much more closer one. You don't need this hall where there are hundreds of kids going in, and it has a beautiful street. There were neem trees. We conserve the neem trees. All the students come out, take the thali, go and sit in a huge amphitheater we've created to connect to the upper level. People are outside the normal table that you're dining out of. Post the lunch, actually discussions continue to happen there before you get to the classroom. You might miss 10 minutes of the classroom, but you want that discussion to finish there so that you're co-creating. So I think spaces and learning can be ignited by the creators who are kind of allowing for that room of discussion, and doesn't necessarily need the classroom. So just to come back to your question, it's for us. We will be given a brief. We will be given a brief saying 10 maker spaces, 20 classrooms, da 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 da. Now, in our capacity, we cannot question pedagogy. That's not our role. But what we start with a workshop where we are understanding what the vision of the school is, and can we then start to look at multidisciplinary areas of spaces that are not bound to be called a classroom alone, or not bound to be called a lab alone. So, like the way Yogi said, my learning can be a lab itself. So, how do I make this a lab for learning?
Both of your answers, Yogi sir and Sarika ma'am's answer, takes me back to Nalanda. That was our own ancient center of learning. So all this multidisciplinary learning was happening in just one campus where everyone from the world came to visit and learn. So what we are getting now, what we are igniting the discussion that happened before in India. So that takes me to the final question to Faeza ma'am. How do we design learning pathways that embed continuous upskilling, ensuring young professionals are lifelong learners?
It's a very lovely question, right? Lifelong learning. I'm going to feed off what Sarika said, and I love what you mentioned, that you have to build schools today that are ready to teach anything tomorrow, because pedagogy will change, curriculum will change, absolutely. It's the same with human beings. We have to build human beings today to deal with anything that happens in the future. Now, what's happening in schools today is we're training them for a world that we've understood. We're training them for a world that we want to see, right? I'm going to teach you how to become a, electrical engineer or a doctor or whatever, right? And there's these fixed education pathways that kids take, right? What happens though is we don't teach them how to deal with complexity. We don't teach them how to deal with uncertainty, because every exam that they go for tells them or informs them that there is a right answer. There is an answer in which I will score marks for because the examiner will like it. There are answers in which I will score badly for. I have to figure out the right answer to score the maximum marks. That mindset that we're creating is somebody who believes there's one right answer for every question that is asked, or there are maybe more than one right answer, but there are fixed number of right answers for every question that is asked, right? What we're not creating in the learning journeys that we're taking our kids through is the ability to deal with anything. Now, the dystopia tomorrow can be anything, right? We keep talking about what's going to happen to our young people in a world in which robots or technology become our masters, not vice versa. Then I throw the question back at you, right? Are we preparing our kids for a world in which we run out of resources for technology to function? Remember, every response, every prompt we throw into ChatGPT burns so much energy. At some point, we'll not have the energy to sustain this artificial intelligence, right? It still takes. What happens if the next pandemic comes around and it doesn't go away after 3 years, and we live in a world where constantly we're stuck in our houses and there's so many possible dystopias to envision, right? Not all of them, not all the eventualities have to be awful, but there's so many futures, right? But if we prepare our kids for only one, if we now today prepare our kids only for a future in which technology is the main function of their lives, then they will not be able to function in a world in which there is no technology, or whichever path we take them through, right? So by the same token, we have to build young people today who can use, because of the skills that they have, they can use any content presented to them in any environment and in any context, and they can figure out how to make it work. And that is an automatic lifelong learner, because what we're teaching them to do is fundamentally this. Whatever information, whatever you have, whatever the world is, whichever country you're in, whoever you're working with, you adapt, you change, you be creative, you take initiative, right? You be that leader. But as long as we have the exams today that say, do this math exam, learn your differentiation, learn your calculus, do your physics, understand the theory of mechanics, remember what the factors of that caused World War II are. I mean, why? But that's it. Then all they're learning is their fixed answers for everything. In the moment I'm in a situation where my fixed answers don't work, then I don't know what to do. I have no desire to learn. Everything is changing so quickly around me. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do with all of this, so I just give up. The world is now no longer for me. The world has overtaken me, and I give up. And that's not desirable. So for lifelong learning to happen, we need to change the way we get them to think. That there is always a way to be relevant in the world. There is always a way to stay curious. There is always a way to be aware and to embrace diversity and to be empathetic. And unfortunately, that's not what being rewarded in school. Who goes on stage and gets the applause of the school? The math topper, the physics topper, the history topper, the kid who won the history B and bowl and brought glory to his school or something and came back and carried a trophy. All of those kids are rewarded. But who calls on stage the kid that resolved a problem between two friends and now they're not fighting anymore? Who applauds for that kid on stage? Who calls on stage, the kid who managed to take initiative and get his group of friends to do something they wouldn't have done before? Those kids aren't applauded. They're not rewarded. We're not teaching our young people that's important. We're teaching them it's important to pass the entrance exam for IIT. And Yogi, unfortunately, we're not just killing them in their soul. Some of the kids we're killing literally, because that's the only goal they have, and then they don't get into IIT and they don't know what to do. And then they jump out of the train.
I can relate to that. My native place is very close to Kota, which is known as factory for that. So
Yep.
I'm only 1 hour away from that. So I know very deeply that they kill themselves
Yeah,
literally.
literally, yeah.
Faeza ma'am, your answer reminds me of one story that Amazon founder Jeff Bezos recounted that during his days in college, so he was solving a mathematics question, so he wasn't unable to solve that, and his friend from Sri Lanka solved it in just a minute. And when Jeff Bezos asked how did you do it, this friend from Sri Lanka told that I solved it while I was in school days. So that reminds me again of India that we have solved through the guides, R.D. Sharma, R.S. Agarwal, everything, and they keep remembering those questions. They have mugged it up, and still, if you give them, the solution is there on their mouth.
But the challenge is, even we have that much power, why we cannot increase the innovation index of our country?
Exactly. Brain drain is
Because
out.
we do not look at the context of it. We can be best executor of some ideas, but we cannot generate the ideas, because generating idea needs a very strong contextual approach rather than a content approach. So if innovation really need to have it, it comes with the questions like why, not how or what. Okay, so if we start with that point of why we really get this education, or any problems starting why would get you the innovative index. Okay, we are masters of how. Okay, and probably masters of what, but not the why. And this is where it needs a very deeper context to get into that.
So yeah, all these three themes have been over, and if there's a last minute, if you would like to add all the panelists, if you want to give a final message to the audience watching it live, Sarika, I'm starting from you.
No, I think this was deeply enriching to just hear Faeza speak, to hear Yogi give it from his life context. He must be facing this day in and day out with different educators. And thank you for doing this, because I think these many perspectives ought to come together. Like we said, a stone sculptor and an embroider coming together. I think life happens only when there are various different mindsets collaborate together.
Okay. Faza, ma'am, your take, final take for the audience.
I'd like to start by thanking you and thanking CIVOM for creating this wonderful opportunity to share these ideas. Sometimes it feels like we're just shouting out and nobody's listening. So it's always good when there's a context in which people are listening. Um, yeah, no, I think the final thought is we need to stop doing our kids a disservice. We need to stop pretending that we are arbiters of wisdom and that we know what their world will be like, because we don't. The acceleration is too fast. I've said this in a few keynote addresses, and I'd like to end with that. As robots are becoming better at robots and machines are getting better at being machines, we human beings really need to start getting better at being human. And that's where we really have to look at whether education is doing that or not. Are we teaching our kids to be worse robots than the robots already are? Are we teaching them to be better humans than the robots ever will be?
Super. And Yogi, sir, your take before I end this session on a grand note as
No,
it started.
it's been great hearing back against Sarika and Fuzzy from you, and I think the idea where when I got little awakening to myself that why we really do what we do, you know, how we can actually create purpose around whatever we are trying to do, and this is where we felt that we should have this thought leaders coming on a board and probably talking to each other about it. And I don't know if it can inspire any of us or a single one of us. That's a contribution done some way. So I think this is where most satisfactory for me, that how we can put purpose to our thinking. And I generally quote Pablo for that, Pablo Picasso. He says the purpose of life is to find gift within, and meaning of life is to give it away. So very very beautifully put across that if I can get to see my gift, and if I can get it away, my role in the society or in the life has been done. So,
So
this
true.
is what we can put together. Great, thank you for being the part of it.
Please hold on, please hold on. There's one more surprise for you, three of you, because it started from a rhyming and poetic stance. So we
Yeah.
have something for the conclusion also, if I admit. So the closing rhyme goes as from bricks to boards and minds to maps. आज के speakers ने खोल दिए learning के traps. Sarika ma'am built vision with earth and grace. Feza ma'am brought skills through a playful space. And Yogi sir's design gave structure its soul. इन तीनों ने मिलकर दिखाया learning का real goal. तालियां हो जाए for this inspiring drive. They made World Youth Skills Day truly come alive.
Beautiful.
Beautifully put, Akshay. Thank you for this poetry and ending it. It's like, we all are life learners, and learning will kind of never end for any of us. And that's what kind of human beings can become more human by accepting that learning is not to end in the classroom. And as bridges, like we said, if we can just take care of the students or whoever is around, whether it's our teammates, and allow for them to create and just be there to care for. And I think that's where even a teacher becomes a guide or a propeller rather than somebody who's instructing.
Nice.
Perfect,
Beautifully put.
perfect finish to this session. Thank you so much to all the speakers,
Thank you
and
very much.
thank you
It
so
was
much to
lovely
all
meeting
our.
you, Faeza.
You too. It's lovely to meet you. And
Thank you
Yogi
so much.
always, hardware and software always.
Yeah.
No, thank
Always,
you to Yogi and Akshay to put this match
nah,
together.
I
I
think
wasn't expecting it to be so deeply enriching.
thanks to all the team members. I think
Yes,
Abhilash,
who are
Yashmi,
working
all of
endlessly.
that, who put so much effort, putting all of this every month, or to get the people, and then have this kind of nourishing thinking. It feels like you got a break. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
from
Happy
every.
to come back anytime.
Yes, so, why not? Definitely. Uh,
So thanks
Great.
to
Thank you very
all the
much for
team
doing this.
members who
And
were
thank
working
you, yeah,
behind the
Yashmi,
scenes.
Avilash, everybody.
Yes.
Perfect, perfect. Thanks to entire team of CIVOM. Thanks to team at GLSN who helped us, and thanks to all the people in the audience joining us live from different parts of the world. It was great to have you, and stay tuned for more of these interesting sessions coming up next. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye. Bye.